Well, first of all, before I talk about my and Brian's story, it's definitely worth commenting on Allie's story of her outreach to become best friends. Because when I got Allie's email, it was almost as if I had written that email myself. Like it was just the kind of loving but very oversharing and let's get married before we date kind of email that I would have written. And I just felt like this is a kindred spirit. Like
Immediately after I sent it, I was like, these people are friends with the Obamas, Allie. Like, get it together.
it was amazing. And I immediately responded with enthusiasm. So
You did. You were very kind.
Well, it's really special to get to talk to everybody today. I come to this work and all of this sector in brain health through my own journey and my husband's journey with ALS or Lou Gehrig's. And, just a little bit of background on my husband and I. We come from professionally, sort of careers in government and politics. We met on the original 2008 Obama campaign and fell in love, ended up starting to, work in the Obama White House while dating, got made fun of a lot, for having walking dates in the executive office building. And eventually Brian proposed and we got married and we moved to Chicago, where I'm from. And then essentially we were just really busy young parents. We had a 2-year-old and we were expecting our second daughter, and Brian just started to have some symptoms that didn't worry us too much, but we thought he should get them checked out. And he, at the time, just had a cough. And I thought, well, why don't you just get that looked into by a PCP? And when he went to the doctor to talk about the cough, he also mentioned that he had weakness in his left hand and maybe sometimes difficulty gripping a pen. And we just assumed, hey, we're in our, late 30s. We are tired. We're busy professionals. We're busy parents. And we didn't think too much of it. But that PCP ended up sending him to a neurologist pretty quickly. And he had this appointment with a neurologist the day actually we came home from the hospital with our second daughter. And he was late coming home, and I called him and I asked him if everything was okay. And he said it wasn't. And I was kind of stopped in my tracks because my husband is the most optimistic person I've ever met and never, raises a red flag unless there's a real problem. And so I panicked and I said, can you please tell me what's wrong? And he said, I'm not far from home. I will be there soon to talk to you. And so the second he pulled up in front of the house, I ran outside. I got in the car, even though I had our newborn and our 2-year-old in the house napping, and we're parked right outside. And I was like, what is going on? And he was on speakerphone in the car with his friend Nick, who is a neurologist. And I was like, Nick, you have got to hang up. I have no idea what's going on. I need to talk to Brian. So we hung up with Nick, and Brian said, I was just told by this neurologist that I likely have ALS. And I had no idea. I thought about the ice bucket challenge. I thought, well, that raised a lot of money, I think. And so I said, well, it's not that bad, right? And he said, it is. This neurologist just told me that I might have 6 months left to live. So, like, I don't even
kick in the stomach, literally.
Yeah, just like the most surreal out of body experience you can have, right? And we went inside the house and we just were on the floor crying, and then Brian said, I want to go to the Verizon store because I want to get more memory on my iPhone so we can take videos with me and the girls so they remember who I am. And that is the very first thing we did within an hour of getting this news.
And was your instinct, Sandra, in that moment to second, third, fourth, fifth opinion, or did he have full confidence that this neurologist was right?
I mean, we absolutely did not want to bet on that opinion. I mean, to some extent, the only way that I held on to some semblance of sanity in those first few weeks and months was I kept telling myself that might be
Like maybe
wrong.
they're wrong.
Right. And so then what happened is what happens with so many families who have this possible ALS or Parkinson's or Alzheimer's diagnosis. We reached out to a specialty clinic and we were told that it was a 4 to 6 month wait to see a specialist. And I was like, how can you even say that to me when the general neurologist who's referring me just said that he might have 6 months to live, and I can't get into a clinic to get a confirmed diagnosis until the end of his life sentence here. And I mean, taking stock of that, now I know that so many families go through this because there is a real shortage of specialists for all of these neurodegenerative diseases, and very difficult to know that the number of people with these diseases continues to increase and the number of specialists is not increasing.
Right.
So as we talk more about what we did next, this is one of the core problems that Brian and I ended up working on.
And so the next actual thing you did was create IMS. Turn down your phone a little bit more. See if, because it seems to be only when I'm talking. So maybe it's reverberating on your, does that work?
Let's see.
Is that better?
I'll turn it down a little.
That's better. Okay.
It is.
So the first thing you did was create IMS. First of all, most people, I think, in that scenario retreat, right? When you hear something like 6 months and you have 2 little girls, one who's brand new, I would imagine most people's first instinct is to say, we're shutting out the world. We're going to cocoon. We're going to hold on to every last second together. And yet your collective instinct was to fight, to create a nonprofit, I Am ALS. And did you guys was there ever a moment where you were like, we just want to be the 4 of us in this moment? Or were you always programmed to want to fight in such a big way? Not just sharing your story, but in such a big way to create a whole nonprofit, which for anyone who's done that or been a part of a nonprofit startup, it is an enterprise, a Herculean enterprise. So.
Yeah. And to your point, I had, right before when we were diagnosed, I was the founding CEO of an education nonprofit. So I knew how all consuming that work was. And, to your point, we've just been given this terrible diagnosis and prognosis, and to throw ourselves into this bigger effort, I was really worried what that would do to whatever time we had left. I think we did a lot of homework and we looked really closely at what there was in the ecosystem and what was needed. And after doing this, sort of listening tour, we realized, wow, we have a network and a skill set in government advocacy that can have a huge impact. And it almost felt like we couldn't hold back.
Right.
It wouldn't feel right to not offer up that skill set and that network to drive change. And so we did co-found IMALS, which recently crossed the threshold of raising $1 billion in federal funding.
Unbelievable, truly unbelievable. And we are, you and Brian's documentary is going to be released soon, soon. And people will be able to see the full story of exactly what you did. And I think I won't do it justice in this interview or this conversation, but to say that you've made sweeping change in the ALS fight would be an understatement, truly. And I know a lot of us on this call are in a similar fight, not the same, but a similar fight to get the national plan to end Parkinson's passed. And so I hope when people see it, they take courage and inspiration from what you guys have done, because it is an all-out war, would you say? I think that's the right word, to affect change in that way.
Advocacy is not for the faint of heart.
Yeah, truly, truly. I mean, watching it, I was just, I've been in so many of those meetings listening to on the Alzheimer's front, but just watching you guys in those hearings, it's truly like, it's both awe-inspiring and makes you want to take action, but also just maddening at the amount of work that it takes to change things that would have a dramatic and lasting effect on patients and their families. It's just, I walked away from it just mad and also like ready to get in an Uber and not storm the Capitol. Not storm the Capitol, just peacefully walk in and advocate on the Hill. So I'm excited that people will get to see that when it's released soon. So after you create IMLS and you do all this incredible work on the Hill, resulting in $1 billion of additional funding for ALS, then in your spare time, you decided that what we really needed was a company. And so you guys created Synapticure, and tell everybody a little bit about Synapticure.
Yeah. And, again, like when we thought about starting the nonprofit, there were definitely soul-searching moments about whether we should start a healthcare company. When we started, IMALS, Brian wasn't sure, obviously, what his timeline would be, but he was early in the disease and able to walk and talk. And by the time we started Synapticure, Brian's disease had progressed quite a bit. So it was almost even a more difficult decision about the trade-offs of spending time together as a family and starting this company. But coming back to our own story of how hard it was for us to get an appointment with a specialist, how hard it is for families with Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and Huntington's, all of these neurodegenerative diseases, to get these appointments. I mean, it felt like we had a solution that we were responsible, obligated to bring to others, because we're very mission driven. And, we ultimately, through our professional network, we got in faster. And we knew and continue to know so fundamentally how that is total privilege, how the vast majority of people in the country do not have some degree of connection or an in to get an expedited appointment. And that's not how our healthcare system should work. And so Brian and I felt very, very driven to create a version of care that anyone can access anywhere in the country from their own home, with very modest copays. That is not a concierge service that feels like one because of the way it wraps itself around you, but that is covered by Medicare and commercial insurance and has very reasonable out-of-pocket copays, so that you feel like you can take advantage of all the care that a family needs in these tremendously difficult diseases.
Yeah.
And so I think, Allie, something you and I talked about also was, do I really need to see a neurodegenerative disease specialist focused in Parkinson's or Alzheimer's? So I'm curious for, your thoughts there, because I think that's also like a key component of the way we approach the work.
Yeah. And I've talked about this on my page many times, but, I had been seeing a generalized neurologist for two years, who I happened upon just because I had had some peripheral vision issues one summer night, and I opened the car door into the temple of my head unknowingly. I didn't even see it. I still don't exactly remember what happened, but anyway, I smacked myself in the side of the head. And Mike took me to the ER, and the neurologist on call came in and looked and said everything was fine. He thought it was an ocular migraine, blah, 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 blah. But asked me about the tremor in my foot. And I was like, huh, oh, you noticed this old thing? I had it for 2 years and I just kind of had been blowing it off. And he said, come see me in my office. And even getting to that, after having this sort of vision issue that landed me in the ER, and him seeing this massive tremor in my foot, even that took 4 rounds of phone calls of me basically begging his assistant to let me in. I had to go back to my PCP who sent me a message in my portal that was like, oh, I don't know if that's really necessary. You and I've talked about your tremor. We both think it's from your over medication of your thyroid. I don't know if you need to see him, but if you can't get in with him, here's a list, and gave me like a list of neurology practices around town. And I called a couple, same thing, like, no, not without a referral, not without this, not without that. And I should say, speaking of privilege, Mike and I have excellent healthcare, pretty much can go to any doctor I want, still couldn't get into one. Finally got in with him after just like, constant phone calling, and saw him for 2 years until he finally said, I think, my arm was no longer working. My hand was no longer typing. My tremors were terrible. And he said, I want you to see a colleague of mine. The only reason she had openings as a movement disorder neurologist was because she was brand new. She had just moved here from California. She hadn't set up a real practice yet. So I was able to see her very quickly. And she's the one who diagnosed me and ordered the DAD scan. It wasn't a great fit with me and her. She was very young. I love her. If she ever sees this, I would be heartbroken, but she was just very young and very much wanted me to be in the driver's seat as the patient, which I appreciate, but I wanted someone else to be in charge. And I got a list of other movement disorder neurologists in the area, and none of them would see me. In fact, one of them I called, and the receptionist laughed and said, he doesn't even have I said, could you put me on the waiting list? And she said, he doesn't have a waiting list. And I was crushed because I thought, well, that's it. Like, I'm kind of on my own. I'm going to go back to my first one, even though I know it's not a great fit. And like you, because of my time in the brain health space, I had connections. I called them in, which was hard for me to do, but I did. I ended up getting to see a fantastic movement disorder neurologist who's my doctor to this day. And he completely changed my course of care. Completely different medicines, different, support systems, everything. And it has truly changed my life. So I know exactly what you're talking about because there aren't many of them. And when you do find a good one or a good recommendation of one, oftentimes their waiting lists are months, as you said, months and months and months and months. So all of that to say, when I heard about Synapticure, and I want you to tell everybody a little bit more about it, but this sort of light bulb went off in my head and was like, oh, everybody could get the access to those incredible doctors that you and I have gotten through years of knowing the right people, and so you putting that sort of offering together for people, like I see how you would have been like, do I really want to start a company? But I have to, so I get it. But tell people a little bit more about what it is exactly and how it works.
Yeah. And, I'm thinking about a couple things as you shared your own story about like finally getting to a specialist and what an impact it was to see a specialist who knew Parkinson's deeply and spent all their time in Parkinson's. There's certainly the kinds of drugs that are coming online that extend life. And, it is a time of hope, I think, for all of us in the neurodegenerative disease space to have these new life extending therapies in the pipeline. And it just is a time of more hope than ever before.
Yep.
That if we have access to cutting edge care, we can take advantage of these therapies. And Brian and I think of when the, HIV AIDS crisis turned a corner. Who survived? Who were the first survivors of HIV AIDS? It was those who had cutting edge care, who were tracking the clinical trials and the data and the the best research and getting guidance from real experts on what to do with their care. And so in that vein, maybe it didn't matter 20 years ago if you couldn't get access to a specialist, but it sure as hell matters now.
Mm-hmm.
And
100%.
Brian and I, we want the best chance of being among the first survivors. We want everyone with these diseases to be getting this level of cutting edge care from experts so that anything that is coming online that is new and promising, you have a real educated partner guiding you every step of the way.
Yeah.
And so that's one part of it. And another part is the symptom management of these diseases can be overwhelming.
Yeah.
So it's, I know, Allie, you and I talk about how your sleep is really difficult. I mean, Brian hasn't slept in 7 days. I just asked one of our caregivers if she could stay tonight and sleep in the spare bed in our room, and I could sleep in another bedroom because I haven't slept in 7 nights. And managing and titrating the medications that help everybody just get through the day, get through the night with these diseases is so important. And when you have an expert physician with specialized expertise in these diseases, the manner in which they can advise you and support you in titrating those medications on a very regular basis is so important.
Mm-hmm. And I also think we're going to talk about a little bit more about all of the different offerings that Synapticure provides. But and by the way, I said this in my post this morning, I am not taking a dime. This is not a commercial. Sandra actually offered to compensate me for my time. I said, no. I said, I believe in this. I believe just as much in it as you did in what you did in creating it. I believe in helping it grow. So this is not paid. But on top of having experts and learning from experts, having a movement disorder neurologist, and I can only speak for mine because he's the only one I really know. He sees me very much as a whole person, right? So he treats my sleeplessness, he treats my anxiety, he treats my physical therapy, occupational therapy, all of the above. But not every neurologist or even every movement disorder neurologist sees people as a whole person. So one of the things that I think is so important that you share with people is that not only would they get with this service, not only would they get access to sort of the top level clinicians and movement disorders, or there's also Alzheimer's and ALS versions of this as well, but for Parkinson's families, for a movement disorder expert, but also like mental health care and, all the other things that you guys are offering, which seeing a patient as a whole human being is such a huge part of this puzzle, because it's not just about the disease. It's about all that goes into being the human living with it and the caregiver living with it.
Yeah. While the neurologist is really at the core of your care and leads, your team in taking care of you and providing guidance, they're surrounded by this incredible circle of additional care team members that are all in your corner. So for all of these diseases, Parkinson's, ALS, Alzheimer's, Huntington's, everybody can see their neurologist on a very regular clip. So the current reality outside of Synapticure is you're waiting 3 months, 4 months, 5 months to get these appointments. At least. At Synapticure, you can get these appointments with these physicians within 2 weeks. And then you can have regular follow-up appointments at that same cadence, or, whatever makes sense for your care plan. But then to your point, Allie, it's the full suite of services. Brian and I created this care model from a patient and caregiver's perspective. And so we knew that the whole package had to be put together. There are these other companies, sometimes tech companies out there, they try to offer like a solution to one piece of the problem or another piece of the problem. And while I get it that it's hard to tackle everything, when you don't create a comprehensive care solution for families, you're just repeating the problem that they experience, which is that it's
Right.
overwhelming to find all the different support points for care.
Well,
So
and to your point, I didn't even know what all of that even meant. Like and I've said this a million times, and forgive me for repeating myself, but we left with a packet of information, and it had no relevant information to me whatsoever as a woman in her 40s. It did not talk about mental health. It did not talk about nutrition. It didn't talk about anything. Like, I didn't even know who I was supposed to. I didn't even know who I didn't need. I didn't even know. You know what I mean? Like, so the idea that having a service that could say, not only here's the neurologist you need to see, but you should also see this person, this person, this person. I didn't even know who those people were, you know? So it's amazing. It's amazing.
yeah.
And it's all virtual. So just so people know, it's all virtual, just like COVID times, doctor appointments, but better. And one of the questions I had when we first met about it was, like you said, if you already have a neurologist, like a suite of doctors like I have, is it still worth it to sign up? And the answer is yes.
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 And one of the ways that we make it really easy is that I remember when we were first getting diagnosed, I had these like 6 binders, and I flew around the country with these different binders, and each one was for a different hospital health system. And none of the EHRs connected to one another. They could not see one another's records. So my silly 80s binders, they weren't Trapper Keepers, although maybe that would have cheered me up if I used Trapper Keepers. That was the sophisticated caregiver burden way of navigating all these different physicians. And it was on me as a caregiver to piece it together. And at Synapticure, a huge part of what we do is we drive that coordination, and we work hand in hand with multiple doctors. I mean, in cancer, there's something called a tumor board, and that means oncology and getting cancer is very complicated. And so there is no one person who's going to solve all of the attendant issues. And so people do right by patients in oncology by collaborating among doctors. And why can't we have that in neurodegenerative disease? And that is our ethos. So we work hand in hand with your current providers. We figure out what support you're getting from them in person, and then what support we can offer. And we just are additive. And to your point, you don't even realize sometimes the supports you need. So for example, when we were diagnosed, I also got a packet, and our packet said, how are you going to explain this terminal illness to your, 2-year-old and newborn? And here is an idea. Get a goldfish, have the goldfish die, and then talk about death vis-a-vis the dead goldfish.
I can't even.
No joke. This was in a packet as the support I was offered to navigate the most complex conversation to ever have with your own babies, right? And I have really struggled with my mental health over the last 6.5 years, to the extent that prior to getting good care, I had to take a leave of absence from work, and I was enrolled in a partial hospitalization program because I was falling apart. And I had to spend 8 hours a day getting deep dive support from therapists and psychiatrists and group counseling to put myself back together again.
Yeah.
So over the last few months, Synapticure boldly stepped forward here, and we have a team of psychiatrists and psychologists who are there for patients and caregivers and group therapy and family members, and we are available in all 50 states. And I don't know if that was a smart business decision, because that's a lot of people to hire and license, but it is true to what families need. I believe in it. I have lived it, and I am so proud that we do it.
And I think first of all, that story, I'm not going to cry yet, Sandra. Don't make me do it. Don't make me do it. It breaks my heart because I think the caregivers get such the shit end of the stick of all this. And I really think about that all the time with damn it, woman. You know, in some ways, and I know that I'm not sure Brian would agree with me on this, but in some ways it's easier to be the patient because everyone is worried about you. Everyone is worried about your well-being, or in Brian's case, keeping him alive and keeping him supported. And in so many ways, the caregiver gets second to that. And it's just, it's fit. And there's statistics about this and studies about this, about the burden on caregivers and how many caregivers come out of the other side of these types of things sick and emotionally unstable and unwell. And it's just the fact that Synapticure also has a caregiver component is so vital, because it's not easy. The last thing that anyone is thinking about, the last thing that any of us in our family, sadly, were thinking about in those early days was what Mike needed. And, you know, it was just, how do we get Allie to the right neurologist? How do we get Allie to occupational therapy? How do we get her to physical therapy? I started seeing my therapist more regularly, which was amazing. But like, poor Mike is in the back of the room, like at the short end of the list, you know? And so it's such a vital resource that it all comes together, and that it can be comprehensive care within one system, so that you're not like trying to piece it all together, because that process is exhausting in and of itself, truly.
Yeah. And so, you know, when we have this amazing care team, not only the specialty physicians, but we have nurses and licensed social workers, and they're the care coordinators that are like constantly your, you know, minute to minute advocate. And we're available 24/7, literally 24/7.
So all of us Parkinson's patients that can't sleep in the middle of the night, if you heard that, now
you can just like reach out. Exactly. Absolutely. And these care coordinators, to Brian and I, being a patient and a caregiver, we hired a whole bunch of care coordinators who have lived experience with these diseases.
Right.
So we have a skilled team that is empathetic, that has many of whom have walked in these shoes before. And they don't just, if there's something that you need that is not in-house, so to speak, at Synapticure, they tackle it for you. They don't give you a number and say, oh, you need in-home, you know, nursing care or home health services. We have partnerships with home health services in all 50 states. We bring physical therapy to your home in all 50 states. We bring occupational therapy to your home in all 50 states. So for the components that are not a part of the virtual appointments, we don't just send you in a direction. We literally set up the appointments for you. We do all of the hustle.
And how many Parkinson's families, oh, are you frozen or is it just me?
I think I'm back.
Wait, you're coming back. There you are. How many Parkinson's families have signed up?
Yeah, we have over 300 Parkinson's patients already.
Which is amazing. Which is amazing. So this is not, we're not promoting this in the sense of like, trust us, it's going to be great. It is already great. It is already proven. It's already working for 300 families. And so all of the people that message me, and I probably get at least one message a day from families, of mostly from caregivers, a lot of children of older parents who are looking to help their parents get care. How we're gonna share a contact email with everybody after this. They can just email. It's a guy. Did I make that up? Is it a guy?
Is it Raven?
Oh no, Raven. I made that up. Okay, we're gonna give you Raven's number, email, and you can contact them and say, I want to hear more about Synapticure. I want to be a part of it. I want to sign my parent up, sign my spouse up, sign myself up, and get started really quickly.
Absolutely.
Unbelievable. Well, what's next on your agenda for tackling world problems? World peace? Is world peace next? What's next? I mean, oh, I spoke to Raven today. Oh, yay.
That's
I'm so glad.
Amazing.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's such good news. You will not be the only one. There will be more that speak to poor Raven. Raven's going to be like hopefully inundated. Tell us how Brian's doing these days other than not sleeping.
Yeah, it's on the one hand really amazing, and we are so grateful because while the prognosis for ALS is not truly 6 months, it's 2 to 5 years. We are now at 6.5 years. So, we are beating the odds. Brian and I believe firmly that like the key reason we're beating the odds is because he has the very best care. Every time a new therapy is approved, we have this system that makes sure that the pre-op gets approved, that you get on the medication. And that goes for ALS, PLS, Lewy body dementia, Parkinson's, for all of these neurodegenerative diseases. And, he's breathing on his own. He's not trached currently. And that's just a huge win. I mean, we're so grateful to be alive.
Yeah. I mean, because that's when you put that into context, like that's like a big chunk of your little girl's lives too. Like your 2-day-old or 2-week-old or however old she was when you brought her home. Like that's not enough, but a significant portion of time that, he's gotten to be with them, which is, damn it.
They absolutely, and they love their dad. And we got a chairlift so he can go up the stairs, and with the caregiver sort of transferring him, and he sleeps upstairs now, which wasn't possible before we did some of this work on the house. But he lays in bed every night. Our 6 and 8-year-olds cuddle up between the two of us, and they read us stories and they give him kisses. And, our 6-year-old, he can't move his hands or his fingers because he's paralyzed, but they will lift up his hand and put it on them, on their chest or on their own hand, and they will hold it. It's so important to feel touch and love and affection, because as your body starts to deteriorate, you can't hug anymore and you lose that. And it's such a big component of feeling
Humanity.
alive.
Yeah. Oh, we love you. I love you. I literally I wake up every morning and I think to myself, what would Sandra do? Would she lie in bed feeling sad for herself? No. She would get up and fight. Don't cry. Stop it. You're I'm gonna lose my mind. I told everybody we would cry. I promised the crowd we would cry. You are true.
Yeah, you're getting me close here. I'm pulling back.
I mean, you've been interviewed by some greats, so I'm pulling it out of you. Tell us one piece of advice you would have, if you have one, and I didn't prep you for this, but about about advocating on Capitol Hill, because it's so easy. Everyone will know this after they watch your documentary, but obviously Sandra and Brian had significant Hill and White House and campaign experience. They were truly quote unquote experts. But what piece of advice would you give to the people who are watching this that are completely frustrated and annoyed that we can't get this plan even to come for a vote?
So at some point, we had a piece of legislation that Brian wrote called Act for ALS, which was about accelerating access to therapies after they past phase 2 of the trial, right? Because then it takes like however many more years to get it past phase 3. So it's essentially an early way to, be able to take a therapy. And, if the third trial phase of the trial doesn't work out, then, it's reconsidered, but at least patients weren't denied access for those years. And we were stuck in committee like you guys are. And we had essentially a version of what we did on the Obama campaign. We had in every state families with ALS go into member local offices and tell their story. And it was clear that every district in the whole country had families affected by these diseases. And then the just pressure that the committee felt, because they were just overwhelmed with the number of meetings from families with these diseases in their district, sharing their stories and why the legislation was so important. Eventually the committee was like, oh my gosh, well, we
got to do it.
We got to do it. Yeah.
We want to keep our jobs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so I know Brian and I have signed up to help create any sort of, you know, catalytic moments and pressure points and help be a part of the unsticking of the Parkinson's legislation. So we're on this team and we're here to support it. And, you know, we absolutely faced the same difficulties, but we ultimately got it through that committee, you know, choke point. And when we did, it passed by unanimous consent.
I mean,
and I have a feeling the same thing is going to happen with this Parkinson's legislation.
I mean, it almost passed with unanimous approval in the House, which is like mind-boggling. And it's got, I think, 36 bipartisan co-sponsors so far in the Senate. So we just got to keep pushing. It's just, we're up against the elections, which is always a challenge, but we're not giving up. We're going to take a page out of your book. Not giving up. So I want everyone to sign up for Synapticure. I want people to see the incredible service it offers. We're going to give you Raven's phone number. And oh, hello from France. Wow, we've got people from all over the world watching right now. We'll share this live on my page, and we'll make it accessible to people. If you have questions, you can reach out to me. What else can we tell them? Thank you for trying to save our community while you're saving your own. You've got just so much on your plate. It's unbelievable. And two little girls. Soon to be tweens, which God love you.
Yeah, I might shut down my work life once they become tweens. I don't know how I can handle that.
just go. Just take a sabbatical now.
You know, just like truly it is my and Brian's like greatest pride and joy. And it is our sense of agency in a disease that is like slowly trying to take away his life. What can we do? We can do this. We know what's needed. We know how to fix it.
You've already done it, Sandra. You've already done it. You've already done it. Just setting this up and giving people power back over themselves and their care in such an incredible way. I'm just sad I didn't know about it sooner when I was diagnosed, because I think it would have truly changed the entire first year of my journey. The sense of helplessness and feeling completely alone that Mike and I felt in that time. And so we're just going to keep talking about it. We're going to keep promoting it, because if people cannot walk out of an office with a goddamn packet that has no relevance to them, and it's not just you and it's not just me, it happened to Emma Willis, as she said on the panel that you were on with Bruce Willis. It happens all the time where people are just handed sort of blanket information and sent on their way. And so to know that then they would just quickly open their phone and find Synapticure and say, nope, we've got it all right here. You know, we're going to have all these people that are going to help us feel better, would have just been life-changing for me. So we're going to make sure it happens for other people. You're doing such, I can't even look at you when I tell you how much I love you, because then I'll just start crying again. But I love you. I can't believe we've only known each other for a month. But I'm excited to be your friend and unworthy of your greatness, truly.
I'm so excited to be your friend, and so sorry to wake you up in the morning with my text and send you off to bed in the late night with my text. Look at what you signed up for, Allie. This is not good for your sleep.
It's not sleep. What sleep? Sleep. We'll sleep later. Sandra and I are going to go on a spa trip at some point, and we'll sleep then, I'm sure.
Oh my gosh. That's all we need. We just need to sleep for like a week.
Yeah. Could that be your next company that you create?
Just like a sleep company.
That's just for sleep.
That's all I need.
Like, I don't even need all the fancy food or like the massages.
Yeah.
If you could just organize spa trips for sleep.
Yeah. The bar is so low, man.
The bar is so freaking low. All right. right. We're going to share tons of information with you all. Thank you guys for joining. Send us questions. Go follow Sandra, and watch the movie, watch the documentary when it comes out. You will cry like a baby, like I did, for sure.
Thank you so much for having me. So appreciate all the leadership you show, Allie. Thank you.
I'll be texting you in like 5 minutes, I'm sure. Bye, guys. Have a good Monday. See you guys soon.
Yo.